before going to the setup of Raspberry Pi, let's talk about some architectural features of Raspberry Pi. As we know, Raspberry Pi uses Broadcom BCM2835 system on chip, which is an ARM processor. Here, if you observe, HDMI ports are available. High definition multimedia interface, that is HDMI, is used for transmitting video or digital audio data to a computer monitor or digital TV. This HDMI port helps Raspberry Pi to connect its signals to any digital device such as a monitor digital TV or display through HDMI cable. GPIO pins. This is actually GPIO header. 40-pin GPIO header is available. GPIO pins are used to interface various input-output devices. Next is Ethernet port. Ethernet port is available to give the access to the wired network. It is available only on the Model B of Raspberry Pi. Two USB ports are available. These USB ports are used to connect the various peripherals such as mouse, keyboard, or any other input device. Audio jack. It is also called as audio output. Audio connector is available for connecting audio output devices such as headphones, speakers, etc. Micro USB power slot. This connector is available onto which 5-volt power supply can be connected. Micro SD card. This micro SD card is available on Raspberry Pi. An SD card with an operating system installed is required for booting the device. So these are the architectural features of Raspberry Pi. Now let's discuss setting Raspberry Pi module. As we know, Raspberry Pi is actually a microcomputer which is capable of doing many things. Raspberry Pi can be programmed using Python language. To write Python program for Raspberry Pi, first operating system has to be installed and then Raspberry Pi has to be configured. Now let's go for steps for booting or setting the Raspberry Pi. Booting of Raspberry Pi for the first time include following steps. Step number 1 is push micro SD card into the socket. Step number 2 is plug in USB keyboard and mouse. Step number 3 is plug HDMI output into TV or monitor. Make sure that monitor is on and set to correct input. So these 3 steps we need to follow. Let me repeat these steps. Push micro SD card into the socket. Then plug in USB keyboard and mouse. Plug HDMI output into TV or monitor. After doing all these steps, last step will be plug in power supply and switch on the board. So let's go for practical demonstration of the same. This is the practical setup of Raspberry Pi. As we know that step number 1, we need to insert the micro SD card which is already inserted over here. Now the step number 2 is, if you observe here, these are the 2 USB ports of Raspberry Pi. To these two USB ports, we have connected one USB cable of keyboard and one USB cable of mouse. So these two USB cables are of keyboard and mouse. As we know, we will be using Raspberry Pi as a mini computer. In order to operate that computer, we need a mouse and keyboard, and therefore we have connected USB cables of mouse and keyboard to two USB ports of Raspberry Pi. Now, this is the HDMI slot of Raspberry Pi, where using this HDMI to VGA cable, we have connected monitor cable of our computer. So this is the monitor or display device cable which is connected to HDMI slot of Raspberry Pi. Through this HDMI to VGA connector cable, we have connected monitor, that is display device, to HDMI slot of Raspberry Pi, and this cable is power cable of Raspberry Pi. So here you need to remember, that is, whenever you boot Raspberry Pi, make sure you have connected mouse, keyboard to the USB port. You have inserted the micro SD card into the slot, and the third important thing is you have connected monitor or display device to the HDMI slot of Raspberry Pi. This is booting of Raspberry Pi.